Once again, we're back and we're having the exciting opportunity to review what we just started this past Sunday. As you recall, we started this new series that we're calling Being Faithful in Little Things. You might wonder, what does that mean, faithful in little things? Well, it comes from a passage in the Gospel of Luke where Christ is giving a parable to the disciples, and it's a little bit of an interesting parable. It's a parable about what's called an unfaithful manager, an unfaithful steward. A guy who was put in charge of a man's company, and he just didn't do a good job doing what he was asked to do. And as you take a look at the parable, as you make your way through it, there's a principle, there's a lesson at foot, there's something that we can learn from it. And the principle that is taught from that parable is simply this: if the world uses its own resources, its time, its talent, its treasure, if it uses it for its own selfish means, how much more should we use the resources that God's entrusted to us for the purposes of Christ and his kingdom? Friends, that's a really interesting question, and it begs for us to dig into that a little bit and look at how we can apply that in our lives. As you recall, this past Sunday, we looked at 3 different things that we need to consider as we look at how we can apply that. And one of the things we talked about was using everything that we have, using everything that God's blessed us with, using every resource for his purposes, for eternity. You know, in our home, as we've been married over 21 years, there's been a lot of different ways that we've had to work at doing that. What comes to your mind, ways that we've actually tried to use the things that God has blessed us with for his purposes? What kind of things, how has that taken shape in our lives?
One of them would be conversations. I think we try to take advantage of the time we have with our kids. And even just the 2 of us, we try to be more intentional on at least once a week. Go somewhere, just have conversations. I think these really matter. Investing in your kids, listening to them, talking about things that do matter. So conversations even outside the house. For example, on Sunday, right after we talked about this, or we listened to a message, we went with the girls to one of the malls to pick up something from a tailor. And just being intentional in our conversations, the lady opened up and shared some really strong struggles that she's been through. And then I got to share with her more of the gospel. I gave her a New Testament. I promised I would bring to her a Bible. Just really important conversations that do matter. Another thing would be the way we steward our house. We have young adults meetings. You will have men's breakfast in our home. We try to use it.
And hosting guests as well.
So those are some of the ways. Or like on Saturday night, Bella decided, well, there's someone in our church who would, I know, struggles financially. So she went and took, not like the worst things in the expired rice or whatever, but she went and she really made a nice package. We call it the basket. She made a really nice, heavy, sturdy package just to, it's good for even our kids to sense like, what are some resources God gave us?
What can I do to be a blessing?
And sometimes we want to do them, we wait to do it out of our surplus, the surplus of my time, surplus of my finances, surplus of my clothing. One of the rules we have with the girls, for example, when I receive something new, a gift, for example, Christmas or something else, we need to give. I receive a pair of shoes, I need to give a pair of shoes. You don't have to wait for them to be really messed up, torn, and just kind of being in the habit to give, not just out of your surplus, but just to give.
It's in many ways it's a test of our stewardship. Are we going to be faithful with it? As you look at that text that we studied, Jesus actually applied it, and he said that the one who is faithful in little, that one is going to be faithful in much. But the one who is not faithful in little will not be faithful even if he had much. And so, yes, that's exactly kind of the way that we've been striving to at least approach this test of stewardship that we all have in our life. But as we continued on, as we studied on Sunday, we also talked about the fact that there's a high cost for not doing this. And one of the things that was really interesting as I took a look at the text was that we not only lose the potential benefit of additional resources so that we can be a larger blessing, but we lose those things that are important in light of eternity. Christ talks about losing the true riches, that impact in people's lives because we're so self-focused. One of the things that I was thinking, maybe a way that we've seen God bless was, I remember back early on when we were married, somebody gave me a copy of a book called The Treasure Principle. It's written by a guy who pastors a church out on the West Coast. And in there he talks about not only investing in eternity, but he talks about how God will reward you in proportion to the way that you respond to him. And so the real question is, a lot of times, will we trust him enough with everything that we have, knowing that he owns it all and believing that he will reward us accordingly? And so at that point in time, we decided, you know what, we're going to trust him, and we're going to start giving, and we're going to start giving of everything that God has given us in a really generous way. Really don't want to talk about the amounts that we give, but we just wanted to make sure that we were giving in proportion to the grace that we have received. And I think through the years what we've seen is that God has blessed us way above and beyond anything that we could think or imagine, simply because we tried to be faithful with everything that he has given us.
For me, one of the ways is being faithful. For example, I like during my time in the morning, I study. Sometimes I'll write an article. So I started my website, writing different articles. I send them through email to a lot of people. Because of that, my little bit, I've been invited to speak at some conferences. So it's just being faithful to those little things, and just I didn't start writing with the hope I'd get invited. But just being faithful to even things like that.
And as you use that time well, then God can take that little bit of investment and he can make it into something incredible. Kind of like the little boy who had his fish and loaves, who gave them to Christ, and Christ multiplied them and used them in an extraordinary way. The final thing that we noticed is that we have to also be very careful to train our focus, to focus it upon eternity and not upon the things of this earth. And what I learned as I was preparing and studying that passage was that this is really a question of the affections of our heart. What is it that our hearts really want? Do we want the things that honor Christ, or do we want more of the trappings and the things of this world? And if we do, then what do we need to do to bring the desires of our heart in line with the things that God wants? I guess the thing that I learned is that when our hearts learn to value what God values, it's then that he can bless what we want. And so
it's that verse, delight in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. When I was young, I thought that verse means I read my Bible, I go to church, I delight in the Lord, check, and then he'll give me what I want. Give me. No, it's actually your desires start to fashion according to God's desires. When the girls first came into our lives, initially they didn't like soup, they didn't like tomatoes, they didn't like things that we like. The more we spent time together, they started enjoying the things that we like. I think that's what it means. To take a little bit of a different twist, the Lord, for example, entrusts some people with certain beauty or certain especially girls. We were having this conversation with young professionals, which we meet every other week. And some girls were saying, well, I'm grateful God gave me this beautiful dress. And if it's a little bit revealing, then, but it's about my comfort. And then the guys were saying, yeah, but this is not, you're not being responsible enough, because we can be tempted to lust. So it's that even faithful the way you dress, faithful in trusting God that, okay, I don't have to be revealing, I don't have to expose my beautiful body to another guy. It's in trusting, like you said, it's the souls that matter, it's the eternity in mind, not my comfort right now, right here.
Well, as we continue to make our way through this study together in the weeks to come, this idea of being faithful in the little bit, the faithful in little things, the things that God has given us now, I hope will really take hold, because as we are faithful in little, it's then that God can take the little and do much. He can do extraordinary things above and beyond anything that we could ever think or imagine. Well, I hope to see you this next Sunday as we get into our second lesson. This next Sunday, we're going to be taking a look at how we can be faithful in our relationships within our spiritual family. And so I hope that each one of you will come and join us for that. We look forward to seeing you Sunday at 10:30 for worship again. God bless each of you until that time.